Okay, we're live. We're learning the Maimer Hashomayim Kisi Raglai. So it's been a few weeks that we tried to get this Maimer started. The first attempt was before Beizir. This is a Beizir Maimer, and then the next week was Shabbos Parshas Kadeshim. So this Maimer is also connected to Parshas Kadeshim. Now it's already after Parshas Kadeshim. Apopanim will do a Chazara synopsis of what we learned until now, and then we'll continue until where we went. So we got up until Eis Hey, I believe. Is that correct? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay, up until Eis Hey. So we'll do a chazar of what happened until up until Eis Hey, and then we'll continue inside. So Bechlalos Yeshlemer, that this Maimer explains to us, amongst other things, you can't say it's the meaning of the Maimer, but it explains to us why you have to learn Chassidus. So what's the difference if you do that, if you serve the Eibishter without Chassidus, or if you serve the Eibishter with Chassidus? That's one of the things that you can learn from this Maimer. So let's get started. The Maimer is used on the pasuk Hashomayim Kisi v'aretz adayim raglai. The meaning of the pasuk is that the Eibishter says that the entire universe, or the entire heavens, are my chair, and the earth is my footstool. So, what kind of house can you possibly build for me that will be of any interest to me? A house, no matter how big you're going to make it, is not going to be as big as the entire earth, and never mind as great as the heavens. So, what do you think you can accomplish by building a Beis Hamikdash for me? Nevertheless, says the Eibishter in the next pasuk, that the Eibishter says, I will look at these, at whom? At a pauper and a person who has a broken spirit. So obviously we're talking about different madrigas over here. And the second question that Deba asks over here is that l'chora, what's so special about being poor? Yeah, the bias, what's so special? See, he gets it. You didn't get the geschmack of the question. What's so special about being poor?
Now I understand why there's so many poor people.
That Hashem appreciates it.
That Hashem appreciates
the poor
it.
person doesn't appreciate being
No.
poor. God likes it. Thank you.
Exactly.
Like so seeing how you behave when you.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Give me some money,
exactly. Like the Rebbe offered all of those presents in Tafshin Tezayin to switch the Nisayon of Ashiris for the Nisayon of Ashiris. Important, the famous Purim.
Tezayin or Yudches?
It wasn't Yudches, that's for sure. I think it was Tezayin. Pastas was Tezayin. I may be off by year, but it wasn't Yudches. So, the Rebbe says like this: there's three types of Aveda that a Yid can do. There's the Aveda of Hashomayim Kisi and Haaretz Adayim Raglai, which this is the Aveda of Torah and Mitzvahs. Torah and Mitzvahs corresponds to Naran in the Madrigas of the Neshama, has to do with Chachma and with Malchus. So it has to do with an Aveda that's according to the limitations or according to the constraints of Naran. Naran are very defined levels of the Neshama, where a person has a certain matzav, a certain situation where he's holding, and based on where he's holding, that's how he serves the Eibishter. Now, when a person serves the Eibishter based on where he's holding, it's going to be a limited Aveda to the Eibishter, because it's limited to whatever he is. Then beyond that, you have the Aveda of Bayis. The Aveda of Bayis is the Aveda of Makifim. That's already Chaya Yechida. Chaya Yechida is pshat, where the person goes beyond his limitations, beyond his boundaries, beyond his level, and he serves the Eibishter without an end, without any limitation. Nevertheless, the Eibishter says that Bayis won't cut it either. Why won't Bayis do it? We already left the limitations of Naran, and we're serving the Eibishter with the levels of Chai and Yechida. Why won't Bayis do it? It's beyond limitation. So he says like this: even though Bayis is beyond limitation, nevertheless, it doesn't reach to Atzmus. What the Eibishter wants over here is a Bayis Asher Tivnu Li, that you're going to build for me. The Eibishter wants that it should be for Atzmus. The levels of Makifim, when you go beyond limitations, so you reach the levels that are beyond, that the infinite levels, Lamaila, that are beyond limitations, Lamaila. But we're still dealing with levels. Any level, even the highest levels of Ein Sof, are ha'aris. They're simply a reflection or a ray of light that comes forth from the Eibishter. So that won't cut it either. How are you mamshech atzmus? Atzmus is dafka through anu Nechiruach, ani nechiruach is the idea of bittul. So what's so special about being poor? A poor person has in him the union of bittul. And because he serves the Eibishter with bittul, therefore he can be mamshich, he can draw down atzmus. So that's until the end of Beis. We'll skip until the end of Aleph, we'll skip Beis, and we'll continue with the summary of Gimel, and we'll mix in Beis a little bit. Now, until now we said, what's the idea of ani and nechiruach? It's the idea of bittul. But like Avram asked last week, why does he use the word ani? No, I think it was somebody else who asked, but why was it the word ani? Ani means a poor person, right? It doesn't mean bittul. So he should have said bittul. Vel za'abit el ish batul, or whatever it is. What's the idea of a ani? Why does the pasuk say ani?
Ani is a forced bittul.
Ani is a forced bittul. So he's saying it's a higher level in bittul because it's forced.
It's forced.
Possibly.
Because I'm poor, that's why I'm batul.
I don't know, like, what's the big deal you're saying? If there's a
No.
wealthy person who's batul,
Adrabah, it's forced upon you.
good.
Bittul is supposed to be from, you're supposed to want it.
Not necessarily. We'll see soon.
Oh,
Okay. So you have like this. You have the idea that ani also actually represents a poor person, not lemaliusa. He's a poor person. What's he poor in? He's poor in what's worse than being poor in money? I don't know. You can argue about it. Depends how poor. In knowledge. He's an ani bedas. He has no knowledge. He has no das. He doesn't understand anything. And we say over here that this person who is an ani bedas, how does he serve the Eibishter? He knows nothing. Since he knows nothing, he has no choice but to resort to emunah. And in this view, what's emunah? Emunah is for stupid people. Smart people who aren't poor, they're not anim, so they can understand the Eibishter, and through their tremendous comprehension of the Eibishter, they serve the Eibishter. This type of emunah, we say, is an emunah. What's so special about it? Yeah, it's like it's derogatory almost. You're saying you have faith. Why? Because you know nothing. Because you're not smart. The person is an imbecile. So he has faith. That's a low level of emunah, and that's not the true idea of emunah, as we'll see in a moment. But al kol panim, this person is called poor. So that introduces over here the idea of emunah. That emunah can be in one of two ways. It can either be in a way of an ani, in a way of poverty, where the person doesn't understand anything, and therefore his bittul is lamata mitam v'das, and his emunah is lamata mitam v'das. However, there's also a bittul that's lamayla mitam v'das, as we'll see in a moment. Now, even in the level of bittul that's lamata mitam v'das, the Rebbe Marash says that atzmas is connected to that also. Since the emunah is to whom? The emunah is in atzmos, so it doesn't matter that you don't understand, and that's why you have emunah. But because the emunah is in what? The emunah is in atzmos, so therefore this level of emunah is also connected to atzmos. However, then you have, in Isdalit, he says you have a level of bittul that's higher. What's this level of bittul and emunah that's higher? That's when a person learns a ton. He understands very lofty ideas and concepts. And he learns more and more and more and more and more until he reaches the limit of what he can understand. He can't understand any further. He understands finer, more edel, more subtle ideas, more spiritual ideas, and he climbs higher and higher and higher in his understanding. But at a certain point, he can't get anywhere further because he reached the limit of what he's capable of. Now, when he's at this level of understanding, he comes to the realization that he still doesn't get the Eibishter. He went as far as he can, and he still didn't get any closer to understanding the Eibishter. Now, when this person realizes, after understanding everything that there is to understand, both philosophically and al pi Kabbalah, al pi Chakira, al pi Kabbalah, he understands everything, and he still doesn't understand the Eibishter. So now he realizes that he's like Moshe Rabbeinu, he's a pesiyam in l'chol davar. He realizes that he's a fool. What's the difference between this fool and the fool before? This fool is a fool before the Eibishter. The other person was a fool in general. He has no understanding.
Shlomo HaMelech says that.
Amarti achakmo rechoyke hi mimeni. Right. So
he uses the word that what's in between. He uses the word pesi there.
That's David. Maybe Shlomo HaMelech uses it as well, but the Pesi Yam in l'chol davar is from David HaMelech. Okay. So David HaMelech says Pesi Yam in l'chol davar, and the Gemara says Zem Moshe Rabbeinu. How can we possibly call Moshe Rabbeinu, who had the tachlis, shleimus of Chachma, how can we call him a Pesi? Because we're not saying that he's a fool like everybody else. We're saying that in front of the Eibishter, before the Eibishter, when it comes to matters of Elikos, Moshe Rabbeinu is a Pesi. Because before the Eibishter, everybody's a fool. Nobody can possibly grasp the Eibishter. And that's the idea of emunah that's l'mayla mitam v'das, and that is a totally different type of bittul. First, let's try maybe to be mamchishit with a marshal of on somebody between a doctor and a patient. When a person goes to the doctor, he says something is ailing me. Goes to the doctor examines him and prescribes for him a certain medication. And not only that, also tells him that he has to change his lifestyle. A lot of the things that he likes to do, he has to stop doing. Father says that he once walked into Berke Raskin, to the fish store. Abdul ben Chai, all of us from Berke Raskin. He walked into the fish store and he asks my father, he calls him by his first name. He asks him, "No, was machst?" My father tells him, "Listen, he went to the doctor. The doctor said that's it. He has to eat healthy or whatever. There's certain things. He has to be more careful with his health." So Becca tells him, "Deige nicht, ich hab a pill. Nimm die Pill, kannst essen, was du willst." It must have worked because he lived a long life. Usually you go to the doctor, he tells you have to change your lifestyle. Okay, you have to change your lifestyle unless you have this magic pill that he had. So you have to change your lifestyle now. Why are you listening to the doctor? Do you know if the doctor is right or wrong? Do you understand what the doctor is saying and why what he's saying is true? You trust him. Why do you trust him? Because you know nothing in medicine. You know nothing in medicine. And even if the doctor, tries to explain to you how if you do this, it's not good for that, you're still taking it on faith. Why, if I do this, it's not good for that? Who says? Who says if I eat this food, it's going to be turned into fats? Who says it's going to transform into cholesterol? So the doctor explains to you that it has these components in it, and it gets into the bloodstream, and you still don't know it. You never saw it. You have no idea if it makes sense or not. You take the doctor's word for that also. So when a person who knows nothing goes to the doctor and he listens to what the doctor says, so that's al derech emunah, that's lamata mitam v'das. He trusts him because he knows nothing about medicine. Imagine a doctor goes to a doctor and he prescribes something to him, or he tells him he has to change his way of life. Then we'll have a discussion, we'll have a conversation, and we'll say, why are you saying like this? Maybe it's not like that. Maybe we could do something else. Maybe there's an alternative treatment that you can give. That's already something else. Now, what's a munah that's l'mayla mitam v'das? What's a munah and bittul from a person who knows everything? If we try to envision this same doctor who meets at a conference, he meets a world famous professor. They say a story, I think, about the Kleisenberger Rebbe. I think it was the Kleisenberger Rebbe in Netanya. I think that the Rebbe came out with something, said something in the Tafshin Mems. It could have been one of the Miftaim or something, and he immediately accepted what the Rebbe said. He said, "This is true. This is correct." And I remember now what it was. He was discussing why the Rebbe can send shluchim. I think that's what it was. Can send shluchim on the Rebbe's achrayas, but he can't do it. He saw the pullahs that the shluchim are doing, and he realized that it's a good thing. And he was wishing. It sounded like he wished he could have sent his own chassidim, but he said he can't. And he said, why? He said, because I'm like a doctor, and the Rebbe is like a world-renowned professor. I can't do what he does. He could take it on his shoulders to send a couple to a city without any Jewish infrastructure and to live amongst the goyim, and get not only they won't be negatively affected, they'll transform the entire city. But he said, I'm like a regular doctor. I can't take such responsibility. So we could bring a mashal also amongst tzaddikim. But if there's a doctor who's at a conference and he meets a doctor and he starts having conversations with him, and the doctor starts explaining to him different ideas in medicine that he didn't think about and that he wasn't aware of, and after a while the doctor realizes that everything that he learned and everything that he could possibly hope to ever accomplish in his life, this professor already knew it before he left university. This guy is on a completely other level. When the doctor sees this world-renowned professor, now he has bittul to him. But this bittul isn't lamata mitam v'das. This is a bittul l'mayla mitam v'das. Because he saw that this person's understanding is way beyond anything that he'll ever understand, so his seichel requires of him that he should be batal to this person. And this is the good type of emunah. This is what we mean when we say emunah. Now, in Aveda, what's the difference between these two types of emunah? The Rebbe says the first emunah brings about a bittul of Kabbalah soil, the lower level of emunah, and the higher level of emunah brings about a bittul b'mitzias. What does that mean? What's bittul of Kabbalah soil? Bittul of Kabbalah soil is explained in Samach and in other places. That's like the bittul of an Eved Pashut, a simple slave to his master. What's pshat a simple slave? He has no understanding of the greatness of the master. He's not shaykh. He's a totally uneducated person. He has no interest in the more lofty idea existences that are in the world. He has no connection to matters of intellect. He has nothing to philosophy, morality. He knows nothing of this. He's a bore. Now, this person is completely bottled to his master, this slave. Why? Because he has no choice. The master overpowers him and he has to serve him. What's this slave the entire time thinking within himself? What does he want to do? So it says in Gemara, this slave is constantly looking for opportunities to run away. It's only because he can't, he's forced. So therefore he has Kabbalah soil. Can we say about such a slave that he's experiencing bittul b'mitzias, that his mitzias is completely batel or not? No, right? But pashtus, you can't say it. He's not. His mitzias is there. Whatever he is, whatever he wants is there. The most we can say is that he has Kabbalah soil.
He bends it. He bends his
He
will.
bends his will to the will of his master. He does whatever his master tells him. However, when we're talking about the bittul that comes from emunah, that's l'mayla mitam b'das. When somebody realizes that the highest level that he has is like nothing compared to the level of his master. We're talking now about an eved chashav, which is called a sar. Who's called a sar, right? A sar, a minister, is also an eved to the king. However, the minister understands the greatness of the king, and because he realizes and comprehends that the king is beyond any league that he could ever imagine being in, so he has a complete bottle to the king. When this sar realizes that when it comes to chachmah, the king outdoes him. When it comes to midas, when it comes to compassion, the king outdoes him. When it comes to gedulah, to greatness, the king outdoes him. When it comes to any field of life, any area of life, because that's what a true king is, he realizes that the king is beyond him. So he becomes completely bottom. His entire mitzias is bottom. And he says the greatest thing that I can ever do in my life is to serve this king. So this bittul is not a bittul of Kabbalah soil. This is a bittul b'mitzias. His entire mitzias, whatever he has, he realizes is insignificant compared to the king. And due to its insignificance, he becomes completely bottom. Okay, so when somebody's holding at the higher level of emunah, the emunah that's l'mayla mitam b'das, then he can already experience bittul of his mitzias, not just a bittul of Kabbalah soil.
So what's the thing then? We studied that last week, that Eved Melech Kemelech. So the only difference between the two Mushalim is that in one case, it's an Eved with a very rich master. Okay, so he does what the master does.
No, it could be a king. The king also has simple servants.
That's a whole different darga.
The king also has simple servants who work in the field.
Yeah, but that's a whole different darga, because then you have to take into account the Mana Chazal, which is what?
So,
Eved Melech Kemelech. So he understands where he is. I'm an Eved, I'm a nothing, but look around me. I'm in a way better position than any other Eved in the world.
I don't know if you
like Eved Eliezer, like Eliezer, like Abraham Avinu.
I don't know if you could say that he knows it. If he knows it, then he's already not such an Eved Pashut. If he understands that there's something good about being a slave to the king, then he's not Befkeder Nichale.
So how do you answer that? But that's the whole point of Eliezer with Abraham.
So I would say that it's not in this mimer, so I can't say how it would fit in with this mimer. But what I would say is that when you say Eved Melech, Kemelech, what you're saying is that he is still connected to the Melech.
Yeah.
Because it's bittul, but that's not any Maila in him. It's nothing special about him. He's still connected to the Melech. And that's al derech what he says in this mimer, that even the lower level of Emunah and the lower level of bittul is connected to Atzmus. But you're trying to say that gives him a certain level, where he reached a certain level. He didn't reach any level. He's connected to the king because he's bottled to the king, but that doesn't express any Maila, any level that he attained. Okay, be that as it may. Now, the Rebbe says that l'chura, according to what we explained, there's two levels of bittul. And the pasuk is talking about the bittul that comes after Hashomayim Kisi and after Aretz, which is Torah and mitzvahs, and after Bayis, which is the Aveda of Makifim. So obviously, this pasuk is demanding that there should be an onion and ruach, that there should be the munah and the bittul that's l'mayla mitam v'das, after he reached the highest levels of Shemayim and Aretz, Torah and mitzvahs, and Naran. After he reached the highest levels of Chayi Yechida, now he has to come to the munah that's l'mayla mitam v'das, unto the bittul b'mitzias, because al zeh abit. So the Rebbe asks why. L'chura, also the munah l'mata mitam v'das is connected to atzmos. If the idea is eze bayis asher tivnali, which house can you possibly build for me? In other words, how can you accomplish Amshachas Ha'atzmos that's only through Bittul? So the Bittul Lamata Mitamadas is also completely bottled. And according to what's explained in other Mamram David isn't Mitzayin over here, in a way that Bittul hasn't in a Maila, because the Bittul is not Mitzad him. Like you said, it's a forced Bittul. So that also has to do with Atzmos. So why is the Pasuk insisting? And this is the key question for the continuation of the Maimon. Why is the Pasuk insisting that the bittul has to be a bittul that's l'mayla mitam v'das? L'chora, a bittul l'mata mitam v'das could also be mamshech atzmos. And the answer, which is going to lead us to the whole rest of the Maimon, to the Nakud of the Maimon, is that this pasuk is not just talking about the bayis asher tivnali, but is also talking about velzeh abit. It's talking about the gilui. Abit is the idea of abat, is the idea of seeing. This is whom I will see. This pasuk is saying that the Eibishter also wants that there should be gilui atzmos, not just hamshachas atzmos, but that the Atzmos should also be begili in this world. And in order to accomplish the revelation of Atzmos in this world, that's only through the higher level of Bittul. Through the Bittul that comes l'mayla mitam v'das. Okay? And that's until where we got to in the Maimer. So if you here you have it, until they say we understand that none of us are free to say, leave me alone, right? Tell me what I need to do. Don't bother me with, with harving, with being me again in my mind, with trying to understand deep concepts in Chassidus and deep concepts in Getlichkeit. Why do I have to, I'm a Kabbalah Selnik. I do whatever the Eibishter tells me. Like a Chassid. A Chassid is a soldat. I'm a soldier. I do whatever the Eibishter wants. Why is it so necessary to also learn more Chassidus until I reach the level where I can't understand anymore? So the Rebbe says that the first type of Aveda is a beautiful Aveda. It's a bittul of Kabbalah Soil. It's tremendous. Not only that, it's Mamshech Atzmos. But the Eibishter wants that there should be Gilui Ha'atzmos. And for there to be Gilui Ha'atzmos, you have to reach higher than Seichel, higher than Chayi Yechida. And for that, you have to push it to understand what's going on. You have to realize the greatness of the Eibishter. And for that, you have to learn Chassidus. Okay? So none of us are free to say, as I'm not just learning Chassidus, I'll just do what the Eibishter wants and then leave me alone. So let's see. Let's continue now. Nice. Hey. These three things. And then the Aved of Hashomayim Kisi, where the person is already starting to get out of his poverty and he acquires a wealth of knowledge and understanding and levels of serving the Eibishter. And then comes the poverty, the bittul, and the emunah that the person reaches after the highest levels that he can attain. So they correspond, they're similar to the three levels that you have in the fruits of a tree. That you have the Gimel Shnei Arla, the first 3 years of after a tree is planted, the fruit is Arla, and it's not allowed to be eaten. And then the second level, or the second division, the second type of fruit, is the fruit of the Shana HaRevis, the 4th year, when it may be eaten, but only in Yerushalayim. And then there's the Veshana HaChamishis, the 5th year, where the fruit of the tree may be enjoyed and eaten anywhere, not only in a context of holiness. And that's actually higher, like we'll see by the end of the Maimon. V'inin the Eretz he Malchus. The Elon who's Eretz corresponds to Malchus, and Elon, a tree, corresponds to Zah. Unatias Elon ba'aretz. What's the aved of planting a tree in the ground? He's like it says in the pasuk to Orla. It says that it's the aved of being mamshich Zah into Malchus. Okay, so the idea of the tree and the three types of Avedas, the 3 levels and stages and the fruits of the tree, have to do with the 3 stages and levels of being Mamshich Zoh into Malchus. There are 3 levels in the Samshach. The Begimel Shanim Erishenis, in the level of the first 3 years of Hamshachas Zoh into Malchus, Mekabelas of Malchus, Rak Mi Gimel Sfiras Acharenis to Zoh, The first 3 years correspond to the three lower levels of Zah, the three lower spheres of Zah, which are Netzach, Haid, and Yesod. Those are the only levels that are drawn down into Malchus in the first stage. What is the primary idea of the mitzvah of Netzach, Haid, and Yesod? Like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, their purpose is to ensure that the hashpah should come. In other words, when a person has a degree of ava, he's experiencing a midah of ava, which comes from the higher spheres of chesed, or the higher bechinas in the nefesh of chesed, and because of this ava, he wants to teach something to somebody, or he wants to give his child a gift, etc. So now, in order to do this, he has to utilize. He needs the services of the midas of Netzach and Haid and Yesod. Netzach is there to force through that he should actually be mashpia, because in the end of the day, he's standing on a much higher level. And for him to actually see through his desire to lower himself to a lower level in order to give the gift or to teach the chachma, it requires a certain amount of akshonis, and for that you need midas hanitzachim to see it through. And so too, Haid and Yesod. Haid is the kleis. He figures out how to lower what's within him further down to the level where he needs to get to. And Yesod is already the connection to the person or to the thing that he's being mashpia. Okay, so what we have clear from here is like this: the midah itself comes from chesed, gvur, tiferes. Okay, that's in short, which is what's called the etzem midas is ava and yira. The midah itself is ava and yira, not netzach, haid, yesod. So in the first 3 years, what's being nimshach, what's drawn down into malchus? Only the netzach, haid, yesod, but not the ava, not the passion. That's the center of the midah. Just the lower levels of the midah. So lachein gamma midas netzach, haid, yesod him doing some malchus sheyisher shemakar, since the entire idea of netzach, haid, yesod has all to do with how do I bring the hamshachet further down and I bring it lower to the next level. So therefore, it's similar to Malchus itself. What's Malchus? Malchus is the Sherish and Makir. It's the source and the root of the Nivraim. Since Netzach, Haid, and Yesod are like Malchus, therefore they allow room for a yesh, for something that has its own independent existence outside, so to speak, of the Eibishter. And since it allows for something that has a sense of its own independent existence, therefore, the chitzanim, the klippus, can gain nourishment from this level. Versteht was man net da? The idea is like this. What's the idea of klippe? The idea of klippe is sitrachen. Klippe and sitrachen. That's what Alter Rebbe terms in Tanya and Kabbalah. It also says sitrachen. What does sitrachen mean? Sitracha means that it's something that's from the other side. The other side to what? The other side to Kedusha. In other words, it's something that sets itself apart, like the famous words of Aniva Afsi, or Yoel Liva Anisisane, or Aniva Afsi. I am an entity unto myself. I am an independent existence that exists separate from the existence of the Eibishter. Maybe I need the Eibishter to give me Kayach and Chayas. Maybe the Eibishter's existence is greater than me. Maybe the Eibishter can destroy me. All different levels of bittul. But in the end of the day, I exist as a separate entity. When the midas of Atzilus, of Netzach, Haid, Yesod, allow room, they said there's going to be a possibility for a yesh. So they're saying that it's possible for there to be a sitra achra. It's possible. They're not chas v'shalom sitra achra. They don't want sitra achra. But because they say that a yesh can exist, they're mashpia to the yesh. If you're mashpia to the yesh, you're saying that a yesh can exist. If a yesh, an independent entity, can exist, so from that, after many tzimtzumim and alamas and estadim, could come where you have mamash sitra achra, something that separates itself from the Eibishter. And that's the problem with Netzach, Haid, Yesod, with when the Hamshach is only from Netzach, Haid, Yesod, that you can end up with chitzenim, you can end up with klippus. Dezeo akasher shel apirus and also gimel shanim ershenisem keneged gimel hamidus Netzach, Haid, Yesod im apirus shegimel shanim ershenisem keneged gimel klippus atameis. This is why the Netzach, Haid, Yesod pirush in the first 3 years of Arla is connected to a different Pirish in the first 3 years of Arla, that they're connected, that they correspond to the 3 Klippas Atameis. And therefore the fruit is not allowed to be eaten. When the Hamshacha, when the Netiya in Malchus of Zah is only the lower levels of Zah, it's only Netzach Yisaid, Efshalias Yenikal Gimel Klippas Atameis. There can be a nourishment for the Gimel Klippas Atameis, and therefore you're not allowed to eat the fruit. So that's the beginning of the story. The beginning of the story is that you have a Netiya, your mamshich from Zayin to Malchus. However, the Hamshacha is a very external Hamshacha, and therefore it's not enough yet to be matir the Peiros to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, and therefore you can't yet touch the Peiros. Because the Peiros are susceptible. If you touch them, there could be a Yanika from the Chitzain for the Chitzain. And therefore they're Asur Ba'ana. Then comes the next stage in the development of the Elon and its fruit. However, in the 4th year, the Malchus already receives from Tiferes. Tiferes is already connected to the Etzem HaMidas. Either Mishlish HaTachtin Shbei, Mishnei Shlish Mishbei, from the lower third of Tiferes, even from the 2 lower thirds of Tiferes, but not higher. Now it's receiving from the Midas themselves, from the Pnimius of the Midas. Therefore, the fruits of the 4th year are described by the Pasuk as being holy, and they give praise to the Eibishter, the Hilul, giving praise of Tiferes. That's Tafka. When you see something that's glorious and beautiful, and that's the idea of Tiferes. Like it says in the Pasuk, Mahalalim, you give praise l'shem Tifertecha, to the shame of Tiferes, because you see the glory. So the second level is where things are already getting halik. There's already we moved away from the Gimel Klippas Hashmeis. There can't be a Yanika for the Chitzayim because there's no place for a Yesh. There's no such thing to the level of Tiferes of Atzilus. There's no room. There's no allowance for something to be its own existence, and therefore now it's already outside of the realm of Sitra Achra, and it's completely, totally in the realm of Kedusha, and therefore it's also the idea of praise to the Eibishter because it's connected to Tiferes. Ubishana HaChamish is the 3rd and final stage of the development of the tree and its fruits. What happens then? The Kabbalas HaMalchus and the Aveda Ruchnis of being Mamshich Zon to Malchus. Here, Malchus already receives Gamish Shlisha Elyon from the upper third of Tiferes, and therefore now we're already in a totally different league. We're in a totally different game. Now we're receiving already from the upper third of Tiferes, and therefore we can already add something new that wasn't there before, that didn't exist yet ever in Malchus. The 4 levels of Tiferes and Netzach Yisaid, which we already have in the 4th year, those are already those are still the 4 Asias of Shem Havaya. In other words, it's not a Heisafa, it's only what already existed in the Gilui or in the Hamshacha of Shem Havaya. However, B'Shana HaChamishis, now there's a new Hamshacha, Nimshach Teis Mikreitzishal Yud, from the tip, from the point of the Yud, the upper point of the Yud, which is already Hamshacha from Keser. Okay, it's explained in other places that Tiferes, and it's also discussed in the Aris, that Tiferes is connected already to Keser, the upper third of Tiferes. So when we say that we're receiving from the upper third of Tiferes, we don't only mean the upper third of Tiferes itself, but we mean to say also where the upper third of Tiferes gets its Hamshacha from, which is connected directly to Keser.
Why is that the whole process over is going Limato Malo?
Why not?
How's it going from Malchus, he's saying?
It should not mirror. Because if something is...
Malchus has none of this, and you want to give it the Hamshacha. So you start from the lower levels. There's a Seder V'Adaga first in the Sfiris.
But the lower level exemplifies the idea that it can be eaten. It's ready.
No, it's Arlo.
No, I'm saying, if you reversed it and you started Arlo with the Chabad, and then the middle level will always be Kedusha anyway, because either way you're going from Mamata Lamata, the middle is the middle. And then finally, at the bottom stage is when it becomes Gashmis enough that you can say.
What you're asking is, why is that the Seder Hamshacha of Sfiris and Atzilus? I don't know. I don't know, but that's the Seder of Hamshacha. When you come to be Mamshach Zon to Malchus, it goes through these 3 stages. It starts with the lower levels of Zod being Nimshach, and then Afterwards comes a higher Amshach of Hamzah, and then the upper third of Tiferet, the highest level of Zah. Said, should we break here? All right. With Hashem, next week we'll continue. We're entering Lag Ba'omer. Lag Ba'omer is going to be Friday. Lag Ba'omer is Dr. Gili of Pnimius Satera. So now we know that to have Gili HaAtzmos, you have to learn Pnimius Satera, which, like David says, in our generation is in the Teres Chassidus. So you should learn it more and more.
Hey, oh yeah.